My name is Aurora Whitfield. I'm 33 years old, and until recently, I believed that if you built your life carefully enough, nothing truly collapsed without warning. I work as a project estimator for a commercial roofing company outside Columbus, Ohio. My days are predictable in a way most people would probably find boring. Numbers, materials, deadlines, and contractors who think math is a suggestion instead of a requirement. I make around $84,000 a year. It's not glamorous, but it's steady. And I've always trusted steady. 8 months ago, I bought my first house. Small brick place, 3 bedrooms, 1 bathroom, finished basement. Nothing anyone would brag about, but it was mine. And that mattered more than I can explain. I didn't get there easily. I skipped vacations for years, drove the same car I had in my 20s, took side work on weekends, doing estimates for a friend who never quite learned how to price his own jobs. Every dollar had a purpose. Every decision was deliberate. So when I finally closed on that house, it felt like something solid in a world that usually isn't. My parents gave me $3,200. They called it a housewarming gift. My mom cried during dinner that night. My dad squeezed my shoulder and said, "You did good, Aurora. Real good." I believed them. I think that's the part that stayed with me the longest, that I believed them. My younger brother Mason has always lived differently than I have. He's 31, good at starting things, not so good at finishing them. In the last 6 years, he's bounced through auto sales, insurance, a landscaping business that lasted one summer, and something involving social media that I never fully understood. He's married to Dana. She's 29. They have 2 kids, Theo and Sadi. They're good kids. None of this is their fault. But their parents treat money like it personally offended them. It comes in, disappears, and somehow it's always someone else's responsibility when things fall apart. A couple months ago, Mason lost another job. Then they fell behind on rent. Then their landlord posted a notice. That's the context I didn't fully understand when my parents invited everyone over for Sunday dinner. I should have known something was off the second I walked in. My mom had that soft, controlled voice she uses when she's already decided how a situation is going to end. My dad barely looked at me. Mason suddenly found his iced tea fascinating. Dana had the kids dressed like they were posing for a holiday card instead of sitting in a room that felt staged. We got through dinner. Pot roast, rolls. My mother sighing like she was rehearsing for something. Then she set her fork down. "We talked it over," she said, calm and certain. "And this is what makes the most sense." Something in my chest tightened. "Mason and Dana are going to stay with you for a few months," she continued, "just until they get back on their feet." I laughed. I actually laughed, because for a second I thought she was joking. She wasn't. "No," I said. "Just that." No explanation, no speech, just no. My mom blinked at me like I'd switched languages mid-sentence. "Aurora, your basement is finished," she said. "You only work from home 3 days a week. The kids can use the back room. Mason can help with yard work. It's family." I kept my voice even. "I bought that house for myself," I said, "not as overflow housing for adults who don't plan ahead." Mason muttered something under his breath. Dana stared at her plate. My dad finally stepped in. "We're not asking you to give it away," he said. "We're asking you to help your brother." I looked at him. "Helping would have been talking to me before offering up my house," I said. That's when my mom said it, word for word. "After everything we paid, that house is family property." It was so quiet after that, I could hear the clock in the kitchen ticking. I looked straight at her. "Then buy your own key." Silence. Not the kind that feels awkward, the kind that feels final. You ever say something so calm it hits harder than yelling? That was one of those moments. My mom's expression changed immediately. Not hurt, not surprised. Angry. "You're being cold," she said. You're embarrassing us," my dad added. Mason leaned forward. "So you'd really let your niece and nephew bounce around because you need an office?" I stood up, grabbed my jacket. I'm leaving before this gets any more ridiculous," I said. The calls started before I even got home. 23 of them by the time I pulled into my driveway. My mom crying, my dad using that low, disappointed tone that always feels heavier than shouting, Mason sending paragraphs about loyalty. Dana sent one message. "I didn't want this to get ugly. Too late." That night, I called a locksmith. $185 to rekey the front and back doors. I reprogrammed the garage, deleted every old access code, removed my parents from the emergency contact system tied to my doorbell camera. Then I went online and got a cashier's check for $3,200. I mailed it the next morning. Included one sentence: "Returning your gift, so there is no confusion about ownership." I slept better that night than I had in weeks. Wednesday, my mom left a voicemail saying she didn't raise me to be selfish. Thursday, my dad said I was turning a temporary problem into a permanent family wound. Friday, my neighbor Darlene texted me. There's a U-Haul in your driveway and your mother is on your porch. I opened my camera app before I even turned onto my street. And there they were. Mason. Dana. The kids. Plastic bins stacked like they already lived there. A pack and play. 2 car seats. My mother standing at my front door like she was supervising a move she had personally approved. My dad by the truck, arms crossed like this was already decided. My old key didn't work. She tried it 3 times. Then she started banging on the door. We know you're not at work, Aurora. I wasn't inside, but I was close enough to see everything from the end of the block. I didn't get out of the car. I just sat there, watching my life being treated like it didn't belong to me. Then I picked up my phone, and I called the police. I thought having a deputy stand on my porch and tell my family to leave might embarrass everyone into backing off. I was wrong. It didn't calm anything down. It just changed the method. My mother cashed the cashier's check. Let me say that again, because even now it still feels absurd. She cashed it. So the money was clearly theirs again. The issue of ownership should have been over. Clean, settled, finished. But somehow the guilt campaign kept moving like the check had never existed at all. That was when the extended family started arriving, not in person at first, but in messages, calls, voicemails. Little moral speeches dropped into my phone by people who weren't there and didn't know the full story but felt very qualified to judge it anyway. My cousin Kelsey texted me that I was punishing innocent children. My Uncle Brent called to say I'd regret this one day. A woman from my parents' church named Marcia, who I had not spoken to in years, left me a voicemail that said, "Pride breaks families faster than poverty." That one almost would have been funny if I hadn't been so exhausted. It sounded like something embroidered on a pillow in a house no one feels safe inside. The only person who was firmly on my side at first was my older sister, Brooke. She called me Saturday night. No dramatic greeting. No warm-up. She just said, "I want you to know Mom promised Mason your basement before that dinner even happened." I sat down on the edge of my bed so fast it startled me. What? She already told them they could stay there, Brooke said. She thought if she announced it in front of everyone, you'd cave. She wasn't asking you, she was cornering you. I stared at the wall for a long second, letting that settle into place. And weirdly, that helped. Not because it fixed anything, not because it made me feel better, but because it confirmed something I had been trying not to say out loud. I wasn't overreacting. I wasn't being cruel. I wasn't the unstable one in this story. They had planned it. My mother had looked me in the face, served me dinner, and brought me into that house already expecting my answer not to matter. That realization didn't make me cry. It did something worse. It cooled me off. You know how pain is one thing, but clarity is another? Pain can still leave room for hope. Clarity usually doesn't. Monday night at 9:14, I got a text from an unknown number. "Dad collapsed. Riverside ER. Call now." My whole body went cold. There are some messages that bypass logic and go straight for the center of your chest. That was one of them. I didn't think. I just moved. I called the number immediately. No answer. I called again. Nothing. Then I called the hospital. No patient under my father's name had been admitted. I asked them to check twice. They did. Still nothing. By that point, my hands were shaking so badly I nearly dropped my phone. I stood in my kitchen in total silence, staring at the dark window over the sink, and I could actually hear my own heartbeat. Then I called my father directly. He answered on the second ring. Not weak, not confused, not breathless. Annoyed. That was the word that hit me hardest. Annoyed. Like I was the inconvenience. "Are you in the hospital?" I asked. There was a pause. Then he said, "Your mother just wanted you to answer your phone." I don't think I've ever felt trust burn out of me that fast. Whatever softness I still had left after the dinner, after the U-Haul, after the deputy, that was the moment it turned into something harder. "Don't ever do that again," I said. He sighed, already winding up for a lecture. "Aurora, you need to understand." I hung up. I didn't slam the phone down, didn't scream, didn't throw anything. I just hung up and stood there, breathing through the kind of anger that leaves you almost numb. It's one thing to guilt your daughter. It's another thing entirely to fake a medical emergency because she wouldn't hand over her house. The next day, my realtor emailed me. The subject line was polite. The tone underneath it was not. She said my mother had contacted her, asking what paperwork would be needed to put the house into the family. I read that sentence 3 times, then a 4th. My realtor made it clear she hadn't shared anything, that she told my mother she couldn't discuss any transfer without the homeowner. The homeowner. I liked that phrase more than I expected to. Not because it was flattering, because it was factual. There was something soothing about facts at that point. Facts don't pout. Facts don't cry on cue. Facts don't pretend confusion after trying to pry your front door open with children standing behind them. I started documenting everything. Screenshots, voicemails, camera footage, the copy of the cashier's check, my deed, mortgage statements, the fake hospital text, dates, times, names. I bought a fireproof lockbox and started keeping paper copies too. $62 for peace of mind. Worth every cent. It became routine. Come home, change clothes, save evidence. I hated that it had become my routine, but there was also something grounding in it. Every screenshot was proof I wasn't imagining any of this. Every saved voicemail was a witness. Every file was a quiet answer to the lie that I was somehow being dramatic. Then Wednesday night, she came back. This time there was no pounding on the door. No U-Haul. No fake attempt at surprise. My mother stood on my porch holding a casserole dish like she was auditioning for the role of wounded matriarch in a made-for-TV movie. The camera caught everything. Her posture, her expression, the way she tilted her head toward the door as though she expected the old version of me to open it just because she had brought food. "I made your favorite," she said, looking straight at the camera. "We need to stop this nonsense. Mason has nowhere stable for the kids." I answered through the speaker, "Leave the dish and leave the property." She went still for half a second, the way people do when they aren't used to hearing the word no more than once. Then she looked directly into the lens. "You are not doing this to me," she said. "To me, not to the kids, not to the family, to her." That choice of words told me more than all the crying had. This was never about emergency shelter. It was about control, about being defied, about the unbearable insult of a daughter who had grown into a woman with a mortgage, a title, and a locked front door. "Leave the property," I repeated. She set the casserole down on the porch. Then she walked to her car, parked at the curb, turned the lights off, and sat there. Just sat there. 40 minutes, watching my house. I was upstairs at my bedroom window, looking through the edge of the curtain like a stranger in my own life. And there was something about that stillness that unnerved me more than yelling would have. Because yelling at least admits conflict. Silence like that feels possessive, like she was waiting for the house to remember her version of the story and unlock itself. Darlene called while my mother was still out there. "Honey," she said, voice low and sharp, "do you want me to call the police or slash a tire?" Despite everything, I actually laughed. "Police only," I said. "Shame," she muttered. I had energy for either. My mother left before the police got there, but by then I had more footage, more timestamps, more proof. And the strange thing was, work had started getting better at exactly the same time my family was getting worse. I landed a bid I'd been chasing for weeks. My boss told me I was probably on track for a promotion to senior estimator by summer. I started putting shelves in the basement, the same basement my mother had already mentally assigned to Mason. I turned the back room into a proper office, standing desk, sound panels, clean light, organized cables. I spent $740 on it, and it was some of the best money I'd spent all year. Every time I looked at that room, I felt calmer. Not because it was fancy, because it was still mine. Mine in the legal sense, yes, but also mine in the emotional sense. Mine because every shelf I installed was an act of refusal. Mine because every nail in the wall said I had a right to make permanent decisions in my own life without asking permission from the people who raised me. That was the hardest part to explain to anyone who hadn't lived it. It wasn't just a house. It was the first thing I had built that felt fully separate from them. And they could feel that. I think that's why they kept coming. Not because Mason had nowhere to go. Not even because my mother believed she was right. But because if I held that line, really held it, then something bigger changed. Then I wasn't just their daughter anymore. I was a woman they could no longer rearrange. And people who are used to rearranging you rarely surrender that power quietly. 2 weeks passed. Long enough for things to feel almost quiet. Not resolved, not better. Just quieter in the way a storm sometimes pauses before it decides whether to move on or come back harder. I should have known better than to trust that kind of silence. I was at work, halfway through reviewing a church roof proposal, when my phone rang. Darlene, not a text. A call. That alone was enough to make something tighten in my chest. I answered immediately. "What's wrong?" Her voice didn't ease into it, didn't soften anything. "You need to look at your camera right now." I didn't even respond. I just pulled up the app. And for a second, I genuinely thought I was looking at something staged, like one of those videos people share online because it's too ridiculous to be real. There was a locksmith van parked in front of my house. An actual locksmith van. My mother was standing on the porch. my father beside her. Mason was dragging plastic bins out of a borrowed pickup truck. Dana stood off to the side with Sadie on her hip, pointing toward my garage like she was directing traffic. Theo was sitting in one of my porch chairs, eating crackers. Like this was normal, like this was already their home. And at my front door, there was a locksmith, holding tools, talking to my mother. I turned the volume up. My daughter changed the locks during a breakdown, my mother was saying, her voice steady, almost practiced. She knows we're coming. We just need to get inside and stabilize the situation. Stabilize. That word again. Like I was the unstable variable in a problem they were trying to solve. The locksmith hesitated. I could see it in the way he shifted his weight, the way his eyes moved between my mother and the door. Are you on the deed? He asked. My mother didn't answer. She just kept talking, like the question hadn't been asked. We helped pay for the house, my dad cut in, stepping forward. It's a family matter. The locksmith looked uncomfortable now. Really uncomfortable. Good. He should have been. Across the street, I could see Darlene standing in her yard, phone raised, recording everything like the absolute legend she was. I didn't wait. This time, I didn't call non-emergency. I called 911. My family is attempting to gain access to my house with a locksmith, I said, my voice calm in a way that surprised even me. I'm not on scene, but I have camera footage. They do not have permission. The dispatcher asked a few quick questions. I answered all of them. Then I emailed the camera clips to myself from my work computer, grabbed my keys, and walked out. I didn't run. I didn't rush. But there was something sharp in every movement, like my body had finally aligned with a decision my mind had already made. By the time I got there, 2 officers were already on site. The locksmith had stepped back from the door, hands raised slightly, like he wanted to make it very clear he was not part of whatever this was. My mother was crying. Of course she was. My father had that same rigid expression, the one he uses when he knows he's wrong, but thinks standing still might somehow make it look like conviction instead of stubbornness. Mason was pacing. Dana looked overwhelmed, shifting Sadie from one hip to the other. Theo was still sitting on the porch chair, still eating crackers. That detail stuck with me longer than it should have. The normalcy of it, like chaos, had become routine for them. One of the officers approached me. Are you the homeowner? Yes. Do you want them trespassed? There wasn't even a pause. Yes. The word came out clean. Simple. Final. And just like that, everything shifted. The officer turned, his tone firm, procedural. He explained that they were being formally warned not to return to the property, that if they did, they could be arrested. My mother kept saying, "We were just trying to help family," over and over again, like repetition might turn it into truth. Mason started swearing under his breath. Dana began crying quietly. My dad said nothing. I didn't argue, didn't defend myself, didn't explain. I just stood there and let the officer speak, because for the first time, it wasn't about convincing them. It was about establishing something they couldn't ignore. Authority. Boundaries backed by consequence. That should have been the end of it. It wasn't. 3 days later, I got called into HR. When my manager said, "We just need to talk," I already knew. You don't escalate to locksmiths and police warnings without trying a different angle when that fails. And my mother had found one. She left a message, my HR manager, Megan, said carefully. She was concerned you might be going through something mental health related. She said you've been isolating and she's worried you might harm yourself. I let that sit in the room for a second. Because there are accusations that feel like attacks. And then there are accusations that feel like something else entirely. A strategy. Calculated, precise. That was one of those. I nodded once. Okay, I said. Give me a minute. I went back to my desk, opened my bag, and pulled out the binder. Not a folder, a binder. Thick, organized, labeled. I brought it back into the room and set it on the table. Then I opened it, page by page. Texts, voicemails, screenshots with timestamps, the fake hospital message, the returned cashier's check, the police incident number, still images from the camera footage, Darlene's written statement, everything. Megan flipped through it in silence for about 5 minutes. Then she looked up at me. "I'm sorry this is happening to you," she said. That was it. No suspicion, no doubt. Just understanding. "Security will have their names," she added. "If they show up here, they won't get past the lobby. Unexpected ally number 2. After that, I stopped hoping this would resolve itself. Hope is useful in some situations. This wasn't one of them. I paid a local attorney $650 to send a cease and desist letter. Not because I thought a letter would magically fix anything, but because paper matters, especially when you're dealing with people who think emotion overrides reality. The letter went out on a Tuesday. By Thursday, my mother had a new angle. She sent Brooke a message. If Aurora doesn't come to her senses, I'll tell the entire family she stole money from us. Brooke forwarded it to me. No commentary. She didn't need to. We both understood exactly what that meant. That same night, my phone rang from a blocked number. I answered. Not because I wanted to, because I was tired of wondering what they'd try next. My father's voice came through, low and controlled. You're blowing this up beyond repair. I leaned back against the kitchen counter. You brought a locksmith to my house, I said. We were desperate. Desperation doesn't put your name on my deed. There was silence on the other end. Then he started again, like he always does. Aurora, you need to understand. I hung up. Again. Because there was nothing left to understand. The next morning I filed for a protective order. Not out of anger, not out of revenge. Out of necessity. Because somewhere between the fake emergency, the attempted break-in, and the workplace call, something had become very clear. They weren't going to stop. Not on their own. And if I didn't draw a line that held, legally, visibly, undeniably, they would keep pushing until something broke. They just assumed it wouldn't be them. The hearing was scheduled 5 weeks after the locksmith incident. 5 weeks of quiet. Not peace, just distance enforced by the fact that things had moved beyond emotion and into process. There's something different about conflict when it enters a courtroom. At home, people raise their voices. They rewrite events. They cry, deflect, accuse. In court, none of that matters unless it can be proven. And my mother had spent months building a story that only worked if no one checked it. That morning, I dressed simply. Nothing dramatic, nothing performative. Just clean lines, neutral colors, and a version of myself that didn't need to explain anything. When I walked into the courtroom, they were already there. My mother sat upright, hands folded tightly in her lap, dressed like she was attending something solemn. Navy cardigan, soft makeup, a tissue already in her hand before anything had even begun. Prepared. My father stood beside her, expression unreadable. The same face he wore at weddings, funerals, dentist appointments. Controlled, distant, like emotion was something he rationed carefully. Mason looked angry. Not nervous. Not uncertain. Angry. Dana wasn't there. That didn't surprise me. Their attorney tried to frame it gently at first. A misunderstanding, he said. A family attempting to support one another during a difficult financial period. Emotions escalated. Communication broke down. It almost sounded reasonable, for about 3 minutes. Then the judge started reading. The room changed. First, the message where my mother said the house was family property because of what they had contributed. Then the fake hospital text. Then the voicemail where she said, either give Mason the key or we'll use the one we have. Then the police report from the day of the locksmith. Then the still image. My mother, standing on my porch, next to a man holding lock tools. The judge looked up, directly at her. Did you attempt to gain entry to your daughter's home without her permission? My mother's eyes filled with tears instantly. She inhaled sharply, like she was about to deliver something emotional enough to redirect the entire room. I was trying to protect my grandchildren, she said. The judge didn't move. That was not my question. Silence. Heavy. Unavoidable. My mother opened her mouth again. Closed it. And for the first time since this all started, I saw something I hadn't expected. Not anger. Not control. Uncertainty. Because there was no angle left. No performance that could reshape the facts sitting in front of everyone. Darlene's statement was entered. Megan from HR submitted documentation that my mother had contacted my workplace with false claims about my mental health. My realtor's email confirmed that my mother had asked about transferring the property into the family name. The cashier's check records showed that I had already returned the $3,200. Clean. Simple. Unavoidable. The judge didn't raise her voice. Didn't lecture. She just ruled. The protective order was granted. 1 year. No contact. No coming to my house. No showing up at my job. No using third parties to pressure me. Any necessary communication had to go through attorneys. My mother looked stunned. That was the part that stayed with me. Not the tears. Not the silence. The surprise. Like she had truly believed that being my mother meant the law would bend around her. That something as vague as family would override something as concrete as ownership. It didn't. After the hearing, outside in the parking lot, Mason tried one last time. I hope that house keeps you warm, he said, voice tight with something between anger and bitterness. When you've got nobody left. I looked at him, really looked at him, at the man who had spent years drifting from one failed plan to the next, who had stood on my porch while someone else tried to unlock my door, who had watched our mother turn manipulation into strategy, and still thought he was entitled to the result. It already does, I said. Then I got into my car, and I left. The truth came out slowly after that. Not from them. From everyone else. Mason and Dana were never actually about to be homeless. Dana's mother had offered them 2 rooms in Dayton. Her sister had offered to cover an extended stay hotel for a month. They had options. Real ones. They just didn't want them. Because those options came with expectations. Job applications. Budgets. Accountability. My house didn't. My house was close. Free. And backed by parents who believed they could push me into saying yes. That was the plan. Not survival. Convenience. It failed. Brooke still talks to me. So does Aunt Carla. She told me once, weeks later, a gift with strings is just a leash with wrapping paper. I didn't argue with her. My father hasn't contacted me since the hearing. My mother, from what I've heard, tells people she lost her daughter over a misunderstanding. It's easier than telling the truth. Easier than saying she tried to move another family into my home by force and couldn't accept the word no. As for me, 6 weeks after the hearing, I got promoted. Senior estimator. A raise of $6,400. I painted the living room the deep green color I had always wanted, the one my mother hated every time I mentioned it. I turned the 3rd bedroom into a gym. Finished the basement office completely. Clean desk. Quiet mornings. No surprise relatives. No emergency keys floating around town. At Thanksgiving, it was just Brooke, Aunt Carla, and Darlene. We ate too much. Talked too loud. At one point, we laughed about the casserole incident, and for the first time, it didn't feel heavy. It felt distant, like something that had happened to someone else. Peace is strange when you grow up around pressure. At first, it feels empty. Then it starts to feel unfamiliar. Then one day, you realize it's the most valuable thing you own. What I learned is simple. Help that comes with ownership isn't help. A gift that gets used as leverage later was never really a gift. And being someone's child does not make your boundaries optional. Parents are supposed to raise you into adulthood. Not treat your adulthood like a room they can still walk into whenever they want. My mother thought gratitude meant permanent access. My father thought family title outweighed legal title. Mason thought being in trouble meant he was entitled to whatever stability I had built. They were all wrong. The house is still mine. The key is still mine. And the peace is finally mine too.